And I have to say, I'll just add that I've spoken to a lot of people who did go to Israel as tourists, who have nothing, like they're not from Israel, they don't have family in Israel, they just came to tour Israel, and everyone is very surprised at how safe they felt. Like that's one of the things that people say. I'm so surprised, I felt so safe. So it's always nice to hear that feedback to know, because you're right. The trip advisors and especially coming from Canada, there's a lot of warnings, and there things do happen in Israel. So sometimes are more safe, sometimes are less, but the general feeling, especially for tourists, it's super safe feeling.
Totally.
It's also one of the reasons that you want to do that and give back like what they give to you, because when I grew up, where I grew up, I felt like those soldiers were like, make me keeping me safe, right? I
Yeah.
was only a kid in high school, or even when I was in elementary school. Those kids are 18. You knew, like, for all my life, I knew that I'm gonna be 18. I'm gonna be joined to the army, and I said, once I'm gonna be joined to the army, I will give back what they gave me. So they
Yeah.
protected me when I was a kid, and this is my time to serve and protect them for the next like 3 years. This is how I felt.
Ah, going back then to the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, Tom, you experienced that. Uh, can you tell us a little bit more about that and what it is and what you did in the IDF?
So let me just say in advance that the IDF is something that is it's a mandatory service that everybody who finished high school age 18,
Hmm.
the IDF, or like say uh, recruiting to the IDF. It's both for boys and for both for girls. So the boys serve for 3 years and the girls serve for 2 years. I think in the last couple of years they tried to make it equal. So I think they took a little bit less than the boys and put a little bit more months. But in general, the law is like three years for the boys, 2 years for the girls. Everybody have to serve in the IDF unless you have a serious, I'll say, like
Unless you're
a
exempt,
yeah, exempt. Unless you're exempt, if you have like a issue that you cannot
physical or
be
mental illness or some
exactly, yeah,
problem at
that you
home.
cannot be in the army. So I went to the army as I finished my high school. It was in, I think it was in August. Three
Hmm.
months after, I was already in my uniforms. I was recruited to the infantry, so I was part of the infantry. There's many divisions, or I say like many like units, and I was one of the units in the infantries. I was there for 3 years. Part of it, I was like also a commander. So I was a commander soldier. I had my own 12 soldiers under my wings that I also taught them, and like my own class. They call it like class. I had my own students. I'll say like my own soldiers that I
Hmm.
train them and teach them how to be prepared and ready for a battle. But yeah,
Okay.
everybody have to be in the army.
That sounds exciting and terrifying at the same time.
You know?
I have to say, like, okay, so again, just comparing my experience when I was in Israel, I have to say I felt really safe there, despite what the travel advisory of Canada said, with all the, uh, what do you call them, the disputes going on with the other countries surrounding Israel. I was a little bit nervous to go, but when I was there, I saw men and women uh, younger than me walking around in their uniforms. They're carrying guns on the street, and I just remember thinking, like, "Wow, I actually feel so safe here. Like, it's all good. They're just gonna protect us."
Don't get trained very well, of course. You don't get those rifles if you don't do the a good train,
Yeah,
and specifically the infantry or the people who's like specifically going with tanks and whatever. But yeah, they get very good trained, and you do feel safer. I have to say that I know there is a lot of sometimes there is a lot of they give some warnings about going to travel in Israel,
yeah,
but most of this dispute is only in small parts of Israel. So in the mass majority of Israel, you don't feel any you're not warning about anything else. Like you don't really fear for like your
Safety.
your safety. So you do feel like your safety is something that
Mhm.
you have it. It's not something that you need to worry about. There is some places in Israel that you not recommend to go, and then you can find yourself like in the middle of like conflict areas. But
Mhm.
for seriously, for like 95% of Israel, it's really safe, and you never feel it like where you're when you were in Jerusalem, right?
Oh, I felt so safe. Like everywhere we traveled, because we would take day trips out and they would be like an hour out of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Because I keep forgetting, like we're not in Canada anymore. So to drive out, to maybe the northern part of Israel, it's like an hour and a half drive versus, a 4 hour drive here or 5 hour, right? But everywhere we went, I just felt so safe. It was incredible, and I just thought, man, there's really something to this, and it made me have an appreciation for these young people that are serving in Israel's military. I just think, well, my hat's off to them, honestly. I admire them so much.
And I have to say, I'll just add that I've spoken to a lot of people who did go to Israel as tourists, who have nothing, like they're not from Israel, they don't have family in Israel, they just came to tour Israel, and everyone is very surprised at how safe they felt. Like that's one of the things that people say. I'm so surprised, I felt so safe. So it's always nice to hear that feedback to know, because you're right, the trip advisors and especially coming from Canada, there's a lot of warnings, and there things do happen in Israel. So sometimes are more safe, sometimes are less, but the general feeling, especially for tourists, it's super safe feeling.
Totally.
It's also one of the reasons that you want to do that and give back like what they give to you, because when I grew up, where I grew up, I felt like those soldiers were like make me keeping me safe, right? I
Yeah.
was only a kid in high school, or even when I was in elementary school. Those kids are 18. You knew, like, for all my life I knew that I'm gonna be 18, I'm gonna be joined to the army. And I said, once I'm gonna be joined to the army, I will give back what they gave me. So they
Yeah.
protected me when I was a kid, and this is my time to serve and protect them for the next like 3 years. This is how I felt.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you view the IDF then as a rite of passage for Israelis, or is it just something everyone's like, ugh, we got to go do that? Or are they just really excited?
I think it's both, to be honest. I think it's
Oh,
both.
okay.
It depends
Depends on the person.
it depends on the person, depends what you're gonna do, like what is the job that you're gonna do in the army. If it's gonna be really boring, like or if you do something that doesn't intrigue you, or like make you think, or make you become bigger than yourself, so you might find yourself like say, oh my god, like I'm wasting my time. But
Yeah.
if you learn from it, from the experience, and you're like at the end of these 3 years, at the end of this tunnel, you finish and you say, oh my god, this thing changed my life, or these 3 years was like I'm like living in Israel for 21 years, for 3 years of it in the army, and those 3 years was the most significant times of my life, because it changed me from like from one corner to the other, to the other side.
Yeah. And what did you do specifically in the army?
So I was in a small, I'll say, I don't think it's called division, but like a unit called Givati, and
Okay.
I was like in the infantry. I was in, I was like training. Started to train myself. Like
Yeah.
I had my own commanders who trained me how to be a soldier, and
Yeah.
then I did like an actual course how to be a commander, and then I
Yeah.
became a commander, and I took my soldiers with me to battle. And when they started, yeah, and it was I think 2006.
Yeah.
It was like Lebanon War II, and it was
Okay.
in the north of Israel. Then my soldiers were there also, and I was studying also with another group of soldiers from the beginning after the war. So this is what I did for 3 years. I was trained. I trained some people to get
Yeah.
to the front line, and I was in the front line just like a little bit, not like I was in the war, but not like in the front line. Like I
Hmm.
was more in the training side.
Right. Okay. That's fascinating. I have to, that's
Like,
fascinating.
yeah.
I have so many questions. I want to ask, like, what's your most um, memorable experience being in this section of?
Sometimes when I'm here in Canada and it's really cold, I'm thinking about like, it's remind me of one of the times when I was, I think 3 months in the army. Was January. It was January 2004, 5, and it was really cold. And part of the training is you need to get along because we did all the training in the desert of Israel. It's in the south. So when we get to the south, the training is in the middle of nowhere, in the desert. So they took you and you need to walk for a couple of miles, and then you need to get your tent. Now you have like a piece of tent. It's not like a regular tent. It's just like a small tent. You have this size, and then your friend, it's like your, I'll say your partner, right? He also have one piece of the tent, and then I have one stick, you have the other one. Then when you connect them together, it's maybe this size of a tent. It's so you can also only cover your face until I'll say to the
waist.
To the waist, yeah, and that's it. So the rest of the body is outside of the tent, right? It's like really small tent.
Like a waist in a tent.
Yeah, exactly. So we slept in the same tent together. It was freezing. It was freezing because you have to sleep together in the same tent.
Yeah.
We woke up in the morning. I remember it was November. It was really cold, and then we woke up. January. January. Yeah. We woke up in the morning, and then when I look at the desert, I was frozen, but the whole desert, it was like around 6 a.m. The whole desert was covered with small, thin layer of ice. Yeah. So if you actually hold the sand, you can see a small layer of ice that the dew actually froze during the night. So. Wow. This is one of the most. So sometimes when it's cold here, I remind myself that I've been in colder situations in my life. And also, yeah, one of the biggest thing I've done in the army is like at the end of the training, you need to do it's like a journey that you need to walk. Now all the unit, everybody goes together and walking together, and we walked it's something that you have to do at the end of your training. Yeah. And we walked for 14 and a half hours. You stop once an hour for 5 minutes. Every hour you stop for 5 minutes and you keep going. It's been 60 kilometers that I walked like by foot.
But you also told me you had a lot of weight on you.
And you have 10 kilos on you, of course, your gun and all your the vest with all the clips and everything. Like everything is with you. It's like 10 kilos, and you're walking for like 14 hours straight, no stop. Yeah, this is one of the.
So you eat lunch on the way?
You eat like you have 5 minutes. So every hour you stop for 5 minutes, and every 4 hours you stop for like 10 minutes, and then you eat something quickly because you cannot eat much. You cannot be heavy on your stomach, and you keep walking. At the end, you eat after 14 hours. So you eat before and then you eat after. You can eat in between like a gum or something. But
okay, so you said this was like a journey. So this is part of the training, or this is like actually
this is the end of the training. So to get the certification to be like the soldier, like a infantry soldier or like a commander soldier, is what you need to do. So I think by today they made it a little bit shorter, but at my time in 2004 we did 60 kilometers by foot, 40 hours nonstop.
What was that time that they told you have to walk, and then in the middle of the night there was like an animal, like a camel, or like what was it?
Oh yeah. Well, I did like I don't remember how to say it exactly. We did like
mapping, like you have to memorize the map.
Yeah, and then like in the middle of the night, I found myself like I met a donkey in the middle of the night. Yeah, that was a funny story. Yeah.
Did it start talking to you?
Yes, actually. Like I came close to him and I bumped him by mistake. Because it was like dark, like completely dark, and I was by myself by myself in the middle of the desert.
With a compass.
And I had a compass and I had like the walkie-talkie that if something happens, Right. And you need to get with a compass, you need to remember the map on your head, and you need to know exactly where you're going. It's like different dots, and then eventually you'll get to the right spot.
Right.
So in the middle of the night, I just by mistake I didn't even notice that he's next to me because it was so dark. But then I heard something next to my ear, like breathing. I turned around and then he started screaming at me, He started like really screaming at me.
Oh my God.
It's so many funny stories.
I think that's like to develop your natural GPS.
Yeah.
That's a good story. That's really memorable.
Yeah, so many stories. You know, in those 3 years, you're doing so much, and it happened so much stuff happening to you. So yeah, there's so many stories,
Another thing I
so
will
many
say
good
about the
friends.
army that I've never been to the army, but from my friends, there's a lot of like love stories that happen because when you go into different units, from what I know, is like you could come from all over different cities in Israel, so a lot of people get to know each other where otherwise they would never have met. A
Yeah.
lot of marriages come out of the army that way, and friendships form. So it's really like a type of summer camp, if you will.
Yeah, you're right.
A long summer camp.
Yeah,
Yes,
really
it is.
long
Long
and
summer
hard,
It's
and
fun.
not as fun, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. We laugh at it, but it's not that easy. You know, it's hard.
Well, no, I imagine, walking 14 hours a day straight.
Yeah, you know, it's very different in here because as you finish kindergarten, you go to elementary school, and then when you finish elementary school, you go to high school. And here in Canada, after high school, you go directly to do studying, or so you keep the studying. And in Israel, it's a bit different because right after the army, right after the high school, you go to the army. So it doesn't get easier; it's get tougher. So like if the teacher tell you what to do in high school, and then when you get to university, it's a bit easier because at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want if you want to go to class or not. So in the army or the IDF, it's getting even harder because you have someone in front of you is like only 1 year or 2 years older than you, and it's telling you what to do, and you have to obey the orders. Otherwise,
You belong to the country. You're the country's
exactly
property. You're
exactly
no longer a citizen, and mentally you have to just accept that you belong to the country, and the country will do with you. You're a soldier.
and also
As,
telling you that
yeah,
that you are part of.
they tell you that. That's
If
part
you
of.
harm yourself, it's like you harm the property of the army, and you can get to jail because of it.
Wow.
Yes.
So, in a sense, it's like really community based then.
Yeah.
There's no sense of individual here.
No.
It's all for the community, we, us,
Exactly.
our.
Exactly.
Do you think the
Wow.
army had to do with that? With that sense of community?
Maybe because everybody been in the army, right? And
Yeah.
everybody been through this tunnel. Like you come from high school that you feel like you can do in high school. You go to school, but you can still afternoon do whatever. You come into 3 years that everybody controlling your life. You like, and they tell you what to do from the morning till the evening every day. And you go home. Depends where you are, but when I was a commander soldier, I was like going home only once a month for 2 days or something like this. So something like that. You're going back home like every couple of weeks. So someone always telling you what to do. So there's someone above you always telling you what to do for like 3 years. So it's fun. There's a lot of experiences, but it's not that easy.
No, I imagine it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
We're not used to that here in Canada at all. The mindset is after high school, you go straight to university. And I know that we talked about that
Yeah.
before, where, the stages of Israelis, I would say, would be, you've got your preschool, kindergarten, then you go elementary, junior high, high school, and then you're going straight into the army. And then after the army, you take a year off to travel, and then you go back and do your studies, or do I have that backwards?
No,
No,
you're
that's
right.
exactly right.
That's
It's
right.
at
Okay.
least a year.
At least a year.
Some people take more than that.
I think what's more regular is because as a soldier, like you're so broke, like you have no money, and then you have to like just make money after. So you do waitressing, or you do some kind of odd job to try to collect as much money as you can. You save every penny, and then you go travel. So sometimes it could take 8 months to save, and sometimes it could take 6 months. So it depends on your spending habits, and then you collect as much as you can, and then you go for like 6 months or 8 months. So it could be even a year and a half to 2 years before you go back into the like try to settle down and do university and start your life.
So university sometimes started when you are 24, sometimes 25, depends. Sometimes 23, depends. Yeah, depends.
Wow. And
Yeah.
here in Canada, people are finishing university when they're 21 or 22 or 23, like in that age range. And then you just either you take a year off and go traveling, or you just go right into the workforce and that's it. But that's just so different than what we're used to.
My like by in my story, at the end, after I finished the army, the day after I finished the army, I already had a ticket and I was on the way to Spain. I told myself I served my, like, you know, my time, like in the army. I gave back what those kids or the government gave, or like I'll say the army, the country gave me, right? So I'm done with that. The day after I finished the army, I was on the plane already to Spain. I had like work permits. I worked a little bit there. I saved some money, and then I went to travel a little bit more. I went back to Israel to work a little bit more, and then I went to travel in South America. So I've been in South America for like 6-7 months. It was 7 months. Then I went back to Israel, and then I started the university a little bit. Like I just started university, and then I said I'm going to go just a little bit more to India. I never been in India. I said I have to try India, and this is where our story is gonna connect.